Welcome back, everybody, to the NRG Series 5K. It's the modern event here in Ohio. My name's Anurag Das. I'm joined here by Julian Kneb. Looks like our match is already in progress, and we've got a pretty big doozy one. So let's kick into the feature match area right now to watch two of the best players, some of the best players in modern Magic here. You have Ash Johnson on the left playing Golgari Yawgmoth. And then looks like we're actually picking up our cards here. Perfect. Gives us time to talk about the matchup. You have Brian Coval on the right, established content creator playing 4-color creativity. This is a matchup that these are archetypes that we've seen a lot of in modern lately. Especially as we were talking about earlier with the Yorion ban, these are the style of decks that I expect to see a little bit more. Maybe if we have a moment, we can take a look at a couple of deck lists here. But Julian, walk me through maybe both of these decks. You mentioned earlier that you were playing a bit of 4-color creativity yourself, right?
Yeah, this is just like one of those decks when I decided I'm going to play a lot more modern again in the future. This is the first deck that looked at me. It reminded me a little bit of Scapeshift, even though it's quite different. And I think the whole idea, right, is that you want to get one of the best creatures in modern to play, and that's Archon of Cruelty. And we're going to do that with with Indomitable Creativity. And the entire deck really is just like setup, protection, and then we're going to do that. And there's a backup plan of using Persist to get that Archon to play. On the other side of the board, we're going to do what I love doing the most, actually, in Legacy, and that's just like playing a bunch of small creatures, some mana acceleration, and then making a deck that's greater than some of its parts. And I would have expected from my limited experience in the matchup that Brian should have an advantage in the first game, but that didn't really look like that, right? I think when we caught the tail end, we saw Ash winning, just getting there with a bunch of creatures, which sometimes, can happen, right? If you're pretty much playing a combo deck, sometimes things don't really come your way. But after sideboarding, dudes, I have seen a Magus of the Moon in Ash's sideboard, and that's a card I'm scared of. Like, that's the card, even more so, I guess, Blood Moon, that completely wrecked me when I was playing this deck as a 5-color control deck. So I'm curious how that's going to work.
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring that up here because I was making this joke with you earlier, but being the Dwarven Mind deck, which requires lots of mountains, it's kind of funny that the 4-color creativity deck actually loses to Blood Moon a lot. I mean, your mana is actually stapling mountain to every single land that you have makes it a little bit weaker. But yeah, I think the overarching point of what you're talking about makes a lot of sense to me here with the Yawgmoth deck. And honestly, the Yawgmoth deck also has an infinite combo of its own, leveraging the power of Yawgmoth Thran Physician alongside Geralf's Messenger to just quote unquote win the game depending on if the conditions are met here. Meanwhile, let's see. Looking at the sideboard here from the creativity side of things, there are copies of Veil of Summer, Collective Brutality, Flusterstorm, Nature's Claim, Turn the Earth. That is a new one. Unmoored Ego, Boseiju, and Sundering Titan. Now, is Turn the Earth? This is it's almost like Memory's Journey, but in green entirely. Yeah, so you can see it on the screen here. Green to choose up to 3 target cards in the graveyard, and then the owner shuffles them into their libraries. You gain 2 life. This could be an interesting one potentially if Coval thinks it's good against the Undying aspect of the Yawgmoth deck. How do you feel about this card in this matchup?
I think it might be worth it, especially since you mentioned that there's the combo, right? We need 2 Undying creatures and Yawgmoth, and then we can create basically an infinite loop to just drain out the opponent with Geralf's Messengers. This is one way to stop that, and that's also like one of the things we have to be afraid of. Also, when I think about it, like Archon doesn't necessarily win the game the way it does against other decks. I mean, yeah, it attacks for 9 pretty much, but there's a world where I guess Yawgmoth could have a board that just like cracks back for the win. Especially, some of those creatures they actually want to be sacrificed. Like Strangleroot Geist is like, yeah, sign me up. I'm gonna sacrifice myself. Sure. What's next?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good point. So let me actually repivot the question here. Is going into this first post board game, what kind of starts are you looking for from both sides of the table? Let's start with Coval's side. What starts does he need in order to take this game too?
I mean, first of all, you want to make use of your mana early on. You expect your opponent to have a couple of creatures, so if you can like land the lightning bolt on the first one on something like a mana dork, maybe fire ice something, or even like spare pierce. Probably not on the second turn, but is a charm on the second turn. That's something that you want to do. Other than that, really just like developing your mana. Maybe hit a Yawgmoth should it ever come down on the earlier turns of the game with something like a Leyline Binding. That's sweet. But from Brian's side, if nothing is happening, that's good for Brian, right? I mean, that's pretty much the control approach to the matchup. Whereas Ash is more like, hey, I need to put something to the table. I don't want to just like be randomly blown out by creativity here.
Okay. Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, you mentioned creativity, Archon. Those are obviously the biggest elements in the deck here. And what kind of resiliencies does the Yawgmoth deck actually have towards? How does it beat something like Archon?
It depends, right? If you have the board that's big enough, you can do it. There might be some ways to take out Archon, for example, with Grist. That's one way. So Brian can't really rely too much on Archon if there's a Grist either available or basically telegraphed by the way the games has played out. Also, interestingly, Grist, while on the stack, still a creature, so it can't be spell pierced, it can't be Is It Charmed. There's some neat interactions in there, and now that we talk about it, I'm not even sure how much I even like Archon in the first place here. I guess there's a world where you could like get Archon down and then have the reflection of Kiki Chiki from the Fable of the Mirror Breaker eventually come down to just like get another hasty Archon in play to close out the game really quickly. Because Grist is annoying. Like Grist is really annoying for the stack, I would think.
Yeah, that makes sense too. Or maybe just, creativity for more than X equals 1, go for X equals 2, maybe even X equals 3. I don't know if that's even, I've never seen that actually happen on coverage before, but it would be pretty sweet. But yeah, getting multiple Archons may be the move here. Getting to the match though, looks like turn 1 Triumph followed up by an Ignoble Hierarch. And we're going to see right now whether or not this Ignoble Hierarch is going to be able to pass the turn or not. If it does survive, that's great news for Ash. If not, well, then the game continues.
Oh, that's another really big card, right? Especially if you're on the play. Dude, if you are on the play and you get to land that turn 2 run and 6 against the turn 1 accelerator, that's just like the best world. This is the world you want to live in. But Strangleroot Geist coming down with haste, taking out the Planeswalker. So by the end of it, Ash actually comes out ahead, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, Coval able to somewhat survive, establish control tempo wise, but Strangleroot now in play. Here we see follow up by a Fable. Fable is one of those cards that has just like become very, very impressive over the course of time. So it's interesting to see all the sorts of decks that it's making its way into. For example, now it is seeing a lot of play in Jeskai Breach, and that just goes to show you how powerful that card is if it can even find a way into a combo deck like Jeskai Breach.
I feel like when I look at these deck lists and after playing them, it feels like Fable is almost like the glue that holds a lot of these decks together. Like we get to do a lot of rather broken stuff, but this helps us fix our mana, just get more permanence into play that we can then sacrifice to or destroy with creativity. And in the end, also like the ultimate, as we mentioned, right? It does something. It's not completely useless. So yeah, Brian is probably gonna be happy here, even though the Grist is annoying. Like the Grist is, like we mentioned, it's a problem, but it's on 1. Like it being on 1, that's ooh, and we have endurance. Yeah, that's gonna make that persist fizzle, and Brian is probably just gonna have to pass back here, right?
I love a couple things about the scenario. First, A, the swiftness with which Ash pitched that Dryad Arbor. B, Dryad Arbor being the pitch card. Remember, Dryad Arbor is green, so it is legal to pitch it to endurance. And then C, I mean, the placement for the Dryad Arbor also kind of cool.
Yeah, I hear. I don't even know if it was you, but I know of some players who literally said at how. Oh, it was Kaiser Vatari. He told me he practices how to stylishly tap his lands.
Oh,
that could be an Anorak thing too.
A little bit of cardistry, yeah. We're gonna see Leyline Binding take care of the Grist Hunger of Tides, and what's the follow-up play here? As it looks like we're getting a Dwarven Mine.
Yeah, that's gonna give us another permanent to eventually maybe sacrifice. It's right now. I mean, if Brian has a creativity, this I guess you just go for it here, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love to see it happen here. Get an Archon into play here and sort of finally get some meaningful pressure on the board here. That being said, that the game is kind of in a lull here. Coval is at 8 life though, so maybe the Strangleroot guys could go the distance here. But we're tapping 3 mana for an Unmoored Ego.
So are we gonna go after Yawgmoth? That's basically the namesake card of the entire deck, right? Well, yeah, and we get to draw a card.
Wow, that is incredible. Okay, so Yawgmoth, Thran Physician, all copies will be exiled. Coval will get a little bit of knowledge about how sideboarding was done here. Looks like the Force of Vigors were brought in. Okay, that's interesting. What else?
Yeah, Force of Vigor pretty cool. You get to respond to your creativity, maybe take out something like a treasure token and fizzle creativity that way. But now for Ash, there's no combo available anymore, and also like no cute Yawgmoth interactions. It's really just beat down, beat down, beat down, and hopefully, I mean, what we're looking to draw here, right, is just another copy of Grist, one of the best cards in the deck. I was even wondering whether we name Grist here, but I guess it's worth it, right, to go after Yawgmoth.
Yeah, I think this is a very reasonable name here. Ash going to draw a card here from the Unmoored Ego, I believe. Let me double check the Oracle text on that card.
Yeah, we should, and now we drew one for the turn, so it looks good.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, powerful
There was
stuff
a
here.
Wall of Roots picked up here. That's not really going to do all that much for us.
Developing the mana maybe for a future turn, maybe unlocking a Chord of Calling. Wall of Roots, honestly, one of the overperformers in the early game. Just being able to double tap, sort of accelerate your mana even more aggressively than the normal stock cards. But in this board state, I agree with you. Wall of Roots is not but a defender.
You know what I want to see? I want to see something like, I don't know, does I guess Aven Mind Sensor doesn't really stop creativity, right? Because you reveal cards from the top of your library until
No.
you hit a creature. It's not searching. It feels like it's searching, but it's not. Man.
Now this is a little bit dangerous because Coval does know about the Force of Vigor in the hand here for Ash, which means that Leyline Binding and even the Reflection of Kiki-Jiki, both of these are, yeah, you can see it here. This is a disgusting play.
Yeah, this is absolutely amazing. You get your Planeswalker back. That's one of the best cards you have from the entire matchup. Take out everything the opponent has that you really care about. I mean, Brian is still gonna sit there with his one of them hasty copies of dwarfs. Not the most exciting thing I've seen in the format, I gotta say. Oh yeah, and we still get to name a card, right? So what do you name here?
Didn't we name Yawgmoth earlier, or is this the second Unmoored Ego?
This is the second copy of Unmoored Ego now.
Okay.
Gonna be interesting. I mean, Brian by now has perfect information. It looks like he's putting Chord of Calling to the front.
That's a pretty good name, yeah?
I mean, it's one of the best cards that Ash could draw here, right?
It's a little bit awkward, too, because you don't want to name the Grist since now the Force of Vigor is, unlock the Grist that was binded away. And so this card placement is so sweet. And now, yeah, so I guess Chord of Calling might be just the next best thing. It does prevent access to something like Magus of the Moon, maybe. That's probably something Coval got to see while sifting through Ash's deck, but this is looking a little grim.
Yeah, Magus of the Moon is interesting card, right? We talked about it. There's ways for Brian to kill it, but he gotta have those cards. And if he does not, like, his mana base is basically gonna be reduced to a mono red deck. And that's probably not how you win the game here. So yeah, Grist just does its thing, right? It seems so innocent, and it doesn't really destroy anything, and it really only just like makes extra tokens. But those tokens add up pretty quickly, as we see Yawgmoth join. And yeah, at 5 life, Coval better have something now. And this is, I want to say it's not good enough, even though like the looting effect next turn might produce something. But at this point, I'm not even sure if an Archon actually is going to do it. Like if we get creativity and an Archon from the top next turn, is that actually still going to win us the game, as considering like Grist is going to take it out anyway?
Yeah, that's a little bit tricky. It's funny because I feel like what you would really want to do is find a way to give the Archon haste so you can also attack the Grist in the same turn. But it's going to be so much time before the Fable actually transforms into the Reflection and then untaps with access to its ability. So you're right. Like, given the board state right now, I don't even know if Archon is that great. We'll have to leverage a couple other draws to maybe knock a couple points off loyalty off of the Grist here before we can actually push through in a meaningful way.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe there's a world where we trade off creatures very aggressively and then get something like as many Archons as possible to make Ash sacrifice the Grist. But on the other hand, if we trade off our creatures, we are not getting a lot of targets for our creativity to get more Archons. So we're kind of like in a really bad spot here. And yeah, we just keep casting more 1/1s for 1. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and I like this too. I like Ash just identifying this is a
It is a lethal attack.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Maybe
So
it's just like super obvious, yeah.
Yeah, we sacrificed the new Yawgmoth to take out one of the potential blockers, which in turn made it so that our attack would have been lethal and forced another jump block from Brian. So Brian is without any permanence that he could really destroy with creativity, and that's the end of the game. Ash wins 2-0.
Yeah, drawing into a copy of Persist with no creatures, meaningful creatures to bring back. And I think we even been to Lightning Bolt. I like that we went all in there for the Archon line, but looks like that we just weren't quite consistent enough in this game. And also, Ash did have a little bit of interaction in the form of Force of Vigor, which was huge, but also the endurance to stop the Persist on like turn 3 or 4 or whatever it was in the early game. So congratulations to Ash for taking this match, aka the Queen of Yawgmoth herself. So that is super, super interesting to see the way the game played out. Not exactly what I would think when you sort of have a control combo against Yawgmoth, which plays out more like a mid-range deck in a lot of situations. But it was really exciting. I think just seeing like the insulation, multiple levels of insulation, but then also the interaction between like Leyline Binding and Force of Vigor. And we talked about Leyline Binding earlier too, and how it has become such an integral part of the format. And so, in a sense, tuning the sideboard to have answers for cards like Leyline Binding while also getting value in killing cards like Fable or like the treasure tokens, like you mentioned, to sort of stifle the indomitable creativity. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, pretty powerful. It feels like it is Layla biting the swords to plowshares of the format at this point, because I don't even see any path to access, not even in sideboards anymore. Like we have
don't even say those
Solitudes.
words to me. I have to what now? No, that card. I am so glad that like we're in a different type of modern where white players, blue white control players, even like don't have to. You know, it's funny because I think Canister posted a tweet a while ago and was like, would you path the Exiles or Ragavan on turn 1 or take the hit?" And I was like, well, the correct answer here is to Solitude pitching the path to Exile, so you never have to cast that path. But yeah, those were certainly a time. But yeah, like the format and texture, I think I agree with your premise is that everyone's going to try to be playing Leyline Binding, so having answers for it is very important.
So I think we're going to move over to our backup feature match here at this point. Yeah,
Yeah, it looks like the backup match is going to get set up. And for anyone who is wondering, that matchup is going to be Azorius Hammer at the hands of none other than the wonderful Will Kruger, one of our champion players on the NRG series, playing against a deck that piloted by Benji Solomon. And this is something that we had alluded to earlier when we were sort of talking about how the Yorion ban has affected, four-colored players. And it looks like Benji is playing 4 colors, but with Micromancer. And that's a very interesting card. Micromancer is a 4 mana, almost like a spell seeker, but it can only search up 1 mana instance, I believe. 1
yeah,
mana
that's how it works.
instants or sorceries, yeah, right. So you basically combine Micromancer alongside tutorable targets like Ephemerate, maybe a couple of removal spells along the way if you need to search up those, and then you just generate a lot of value that way. So this is a pretty simple deck list. I mean, 4 red and 6, a bunch of Teferis and Solitudes, prismatic endings, everything that you've seen before in the 4-color deck. But now, since we don't have access to Yorion, certainly fewer blinkables. There's no Abundant Growth. There's no Icewind Coatl. How do you feel about this deck?
I love the deck. It looked pretty weird to me the first time I saw it, but once you realize, right, that's like you mentioned, it's still very, very similar to the Blink deck we had before, and we still have like all the cool ephemerate loops that going on and Micromancer to find them. I love that. I've never been a fan of Yorion, Icewind Coatl, all that kind of stuff. I like when it goes down to the really meaty, cool cards that do something, and this deck feels like something I'd even be interested in playing. I hear you also picked it up.
I've seen some stuff. Okay, maybe the players are ready now, so we'll dive in as soon as we can into the match here. But I've seen a couple deck lists. I've seen a couple players play it. I'll be very honest with you. Here's my take on this. This is definitely like the Yorion players on that hopium trying to like find a way. This reminds me like back when Top got banned and I had a tournament the next week and I was like, oh, I wonder what I'll play. Maybe Portent's good enough, guys, right? And I feel like you could just see like 4-color players with like all of their Micromancers been like, yeah, Yorion, right? Like, I don't know. It's funny to me. So we'll see how it actually pans out. But if the match is ready, then yeah, we'll dive into it. If not, we can take a look at. Okay, wonderful. Yeah. So looks like we're in game 2, and look at that, Benji up a game here with the Micromancer deck. Oh, okay. Looks like things are maybe flopped around. We'll update the UI in just a little bit here, but looking at the board state, Will has a Relic of Progenitus in play alongside an Esper Sentinel, and Benji slowly developing mana here.
So what do we actually have to defend ourselves here? I guess we have the usual prismatic endings. Am I not seeing any kind of leyline bindings in this?
Oh,
You
yeah,
get the
that is very
solitudes, but
interesting.
there are no. I mean, you gotta have those slots for something, right? And I guess leyline bindings just didn't make the cut here.
Yeah,
Somewhat
makes sense.
unfortunate against the hammer deck, of course, where you'd love to have some kind of instant speed removal. But we will see how this develops for now. I just want to see the combo in action. I want some like time warp, eternal witness, ephemerate. I want to see that happening because I keep hearing about it, but I rarely ever see it in action. So maybe it was like over advertised.
Oh, wow,
Oh
check
man,
this
that
out.
feels so bad.
Yeah, this is a
Yeah.
great sign for Will Kruger. Counterspell on the Esper Sentinel. Draw a card. Means there's probably a removal light hand here from the side of Benji.
I mean, Will is pretty happy here, right? It's
I'd
not
say
the
so, yeah.
it's not the best kind of opening, but as soon as you start getting value out of your Esper Sentinels, and we drew at least one card out of the first one already, that feels pretty good. And that's probably going to be a Teferi Time Raveler, I would guess. 3 mana, not too many things we tap out here, main phase.
So in terms of instant speed removal, there are 4 copies of Solitude, so there's a little bit of insulation there, but I think the general premise is that because you can't tutor up Leyline Binding with Micromancer, I mean, Leyline Binding is functionally 1 mana, but not an instant, and also 6 mana technically, like, it's like the Terminus syndrome, Micromancer won't be able to pick that one up, and I guess that makes sense, explains why this deck is built the way it is. Good call on the Teferi, though. That's going to come down on turn 3.
Yeah. That's going to bounce that one. But that's also going to give another card to Will again, right?
Yeah.
Couldn't
So
really
Will's
type anything.
hand.
I wonder if you want to build your hammer deck in a way that you can really take advantage of all the extra draws you force out of your opponent when you have the Esper Sentinels early on in the game. So you'll have some kind of like rather end game-ish stuff that's really gonna hammer home the win. Okay, no pun intended.
What a butt. Nice. All right, so Yawgmoth next is going to take down the Teferi Time Raveler here. Urza Saga going to come down chapter 1. And wow, take a look at that. Not redeploying the Esper Sentinel.
What are we trying to do here? What are we keeping up here?
Very good question.
Spare PS, I guess.
That might be one of the only cards you could actually justify. And if I mean, Spell Pierce, okay, so interaction, that's the first thing, right? If we're not redeploying our threat, that means we have something else to do. Interaction,
Mana Leak,
which
maybe. I see 2 copies of Mana Leak in the sideboard. That actually could be a thing. And actually, you know what? Why am I not looking at street? There's literally Mana Leak in hand on which side of the board. So if Benji's going to tap out for anything, really, it's not going to resolve. If there's going to be like Micromancer or Omnath, like Omnath would be the big target to hit here.
okay.
But none of that.
Benji able to sniff it out, just passes the turn, plays a Breeding Pool tapped. Saga going to go up to chapter 2. And this is kind of the position you want to be in here from the hammer side of things. Right?
Especially since you're not up against any dress downs, right? So there's not really any good trades that Benji can make where you basically take out the entire fleet of construct that's gonna come out of the Urza Saga. So you'll actually have to fight them fair, and that's not something control decks like to do most of the time.
Oh no, yeah. Tell me about it. And honestly, I just want to give a shout out here to how patiently Will is actually playing with this deck. Not deploying the Esper Sentinel here, instead realizing they're gonna eventually have to put something into play. I know these 4-colored players, they get a little bit antsy sometimes, and so I'll cast my Mana Leak. I'll make my construct, and I'll just I'll take it slow and steady, but I'll win the race.
Yeah, and those constructs are already like reasonably big, right? This is gonna be a 4/4 if you make another token and then tutor up something here. That's gonna already start hitting pretty hard. And Benji, I mean, at this point, Benji really probably needs to tap out on every single turn to try and stay in the game. And that's kind of what Will wants, because eventually we are gonna be able to just get in there with our manlands once again. There's another hammer. Dude, I think we haven't really seen any equipped hammers this far. Like, what's going on in this format? Is this just like is this our actual late game plan? We're gonna just pay all the mana in the world to equip the hammer?
That's
I mean,
actually
we're
funny.
not that far from it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, yeah, well, that's the joke, right? Oh, Pure Steel Paladin. Okay, that is a cohesive story.
Now it makes all of a sudden makes a lot more sense. And
So
at this point, you want to distribute your hammers, right? You don't want. Okay. I was gonna say maybe we want to put them on individual creatures.
Okay. Looks like we equipped both to the construct, then animated the Yawgmoth Nexus with the floating Urza Saga mana, and now we're swinging in with a lot of damage. Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. And that's gonna be the win here for the hammer side of things. 2-0 going to Will Kruger. And honestly, this was a nice little allusion to what you were mentioning earlier about how hammer is the style of deck that can play a little bit slowly, that can like it doesn't always have to kill you on turn 2, turn 3. There are a lot of tools in the deck that allow you to grind out matches. And we saw a lot of tools there in that game.
And did you see what Will actually did there? He initially equipped both cards to the same creature, to the construct, to maybe, bait out a removal spell. But yeah, when that didn't come, he was like, you know what? Actually, I'm going to animate Yawgmoth Nexus and equip to that. Because if there's one removal spell, of course, you want to hit it at the Yawgmoth Nexus so you get to stay alive for at least a turn, hopefully. But that's just like these small, tiny little things where you might get an advantage. And I think that's just such a cool thing that you show real mastery with the deck.
Absolutely, yeah. All right, looks like we're going to kick into a break here as we get round 2 of this Modern 5K settled up here and everything in Ohio. Afterwards, we'll take a look at a couple deck lists and we'll see what else is going on in the event as we talk about upcoming events and things like that. So sit tight. We'll be back.